your show?
I don't know.
Okay. Ready?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Leslie McDonald, and I'm Jeff McDonald's wife, and he does the Ye Olde Scot program, and I'm here to ask him questions about his show and his background. All right, let's start off with number one. All right, I heard that you went to Scotland, Ireland. What did you like the best and least about it?
All right. Yeah, me and my brothers, I have two older brothers, and we went to, what?
You did.
This camera's showing me.
Oh.
That's you. This is me.
Okay.
Okay? So, in 2002, me and my two older brothers, we went to Ireland and Scotland. We spent a week in Ireland, and we spent a week in Scotland. Now, I'm going to have to give you the best and least of each, because each were kind of their own separate deal. In Ireland, probably the best thing about it was just being there with my brothers. I mean, we just partied our butts off for a week. We hit every pub we could possibly hit, and we toured as much as possible. Since we were usually, 3 sheets to the wind with all the Guinness and the whiskey we were drinking, we took cabs and buses pretty much everywhere. So we were taking tours because when you go to Dublin, you can get on a bus there and tour the whole city, hit every site. Then you can get on a bus and you can go do little small tours outside of the city, hitting places, hitting Wicklow and seeing Avoca where they filmed Ballykissangel at, or go north and see places like Malahide Castle and the places where the Battle of the Boyne took place. And then you can get on trains and you can take them to other parts of Ireland like Belfast and Cork and Donegal, and you can go in. As soon as you hit those towns, they have their own little bus situation. The public transportation there is great, by the way. So you can tour a lot of Ireland in 1 week if you really put your effort into it.
Hey, did you ever speak Gaelic there to everybody?
Yeah, I didn't speak Gaelic until I got to Scotland. Well, because that's what I learned. I learned Scottish Gaelic. And one cool thing we did do in Ireland was we were there. My oldest brother was Catholic, so he was very devout Catholic. So we on the Feast of the Ascension, we went to St. Mary's Pro Cathedral, and they gave the Mass in Gaelic, which is really cool to watch. But now when we got to Scotland, I didn't really speak it until we got into the Highlands. In the Highlands we had a driver, because we didn't want to be worried about rental cars and all that, so we hired a driver, and he was a native speaker. For some reason, he didn't think it was proper for somebody who was not native to be speaking Gaelic. He was just totally against it. And he spoke very little Gaelic, to us. Even though he used that as a selling point for his service, he didn't feel it was right for me to be speaking Gaelic. Now, I thought that was kind of odd. But when we got to places like in Portree, there's a bookstore, and I'm over there trying to find me some Gaelic books and things like that. And a young lady there spoke to me in Gaelic, and I replied. And then we struck up a conversation, and she thought that was just the coolest thing. And lots of people did. So he's rare. The people who are over there who don't really like outsiders speaking the Gaelic, they're kind of rare. Most people, they think it's very cool that you're trying to learn something, trying to stay attached to your native language or your ancestors' language. So, yeah. Yeah.
What made you interested in starting Gaelic?
All right, well, when I was in the Highland Games, I used to compete in the Highland Games. And at the same time, I was a heavy equipment mechanic with a rental company. And all that work with my hands, working out, going to the gym twice a day and everything, it really did a number on my wrist. So I ended up having to have carpal tunnel surgery. After my carpal tunnel surgery, I couldn't throw anymore. Every time I tried to throw, it was just excruciating pain. But I loved going to the festivals. And I didn't want to be somebody who just went to the festivals and, I wanted to do something at the festivals. So that's what got me into the language. I tried learning a little bit. I was learning it before we went to on our trip to Scotland and Ireland. But then probably about 2004, when my wrist really got bad, and I stopped competing, I got into things like, I got more in depth into language. I started actually setting up tents, the vendor tents, and selling T-shirts because I know how to do silk screening and all that. So that was a way for me just to stay involved in something.
Okay, my next question is, how did you get involved in the Highland Games?
In the Highland Games? Okay.
Is that?
Yeah, it's still on.
Okay. How did you get involved in the Highland Games in Texas?
Well, you kept seeing the festivals come up, and it would never fail. The festival would come up, and I'd have to work or something. Finally, I was just like, when that festival comes up again, I don't care what's going on, I'm going. So we went. And so we're walking around the festival, and we're having a good time, me and my brother, and my son, Bobby. And the guy, he just saw me walking by, and he's like, "Hey, you're a big guy, you want to give it a try?" I thought, I've always been a big, strong guy, so I was like, sure, why not? Man, first time I threw them weights, I was hooked. And the first time I threw the caber, I turned it. That did it for me. I was hooked. I knew if there was a sport in the world that I was supposed to do, it was this. So after that, I got involved with this little group of people who got together and trained and practiced, and it just kind of went from there. We traveled around. We went places: Colorado, Mississippi, New Orleans, all over Texas. Texas has got probably 12 really good festivals every year. So, yeah.
Okay, what's your favorite sport, your favorite event in the Highland Games?
Okay. That would probably have to be the caber. Everybody loves the caber. But I was always really good at picking the caber. That seemed to be the hardest part for a lot of guys. So I don't care how heavy the caber was, I could always pick it and get it up. I might not be able to turn it, but I could get it up and run with it. And I've got a famous picture one day after the competition was over, and I had done real good that day. I actually took first place in the caber. It was at the Celtic Heritage Festival in Bedford, Texas. There was somebody there from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, and he asked me flat out, he goes, "Do you mind if I set up some cameras and you could turn a caber for me?" And I was like, "Well, sure, I don't have a problem with it." So we set it up, and he did it. Bam, there you go. It was supposed to be in the paper, but I didn't remember ever being in the paper. At the same time, there was somebody there from NBC, from Dateline, and they were doing a story on the Highland Games. Now, I never saw it, but I heard that there was some footage of us, I don't know if it was me or not, of us doing the games on some story they did on Dateline, but I don't remember ever seeing it.
Involved in your Scottish and Irish heritage.
Oh.
Or your culture.
Well, probably, when I was growing up, with a name like McDonald, you were assumed to be Irish. And here in St. Louis, all the areas of St. Louis are segregated. You've got a black area of town. You got the place where the the Mexicans are. You have a place for the Irish, it's called Dogtown. You got places for the Italians, which is the Hill. And then you've got places for Bosnians. Everybody has their own little segment of town that they've kind of incorporated for themselves. And growing up with the name like McDonald, the Italian kids in the neighborhood would always pick on me because I was the Irish. Apparently the Italians and Irish didn't get along for some reason, I don't know. But because of that, it came up a lot. And then I would talk to my mom about being Irish, and she was one to inform me, you're actually Scotch-Irish. And then my grandma McDonald, she actually spoke a little Gaelic, and it usually came out when she was upset. But, and then being in school, and I had a teacher who, when she asked me, we were talking about different cultures and stuff, I said I was Irish. And she said, well, with a name like McDonald, you're probably Scottish. And that's when I started questioning it, so I started looking it up. And that's when I realized, hey, I am Scottish. So I started learning more and reading more, and after that, almost everything I read had to do with Irish, Scottish, or Celtic heritage.
Why is your Celtic ancestry and history and culture are important to you?
Okay. Well, everybody needs to have a sense of who they are. And in this day and age, with all the multicultural, mixing, I don't have a problem with that. It's just you shouldn't forget who you are, where your ancestors came from. Your history is very important. It teaches you who you are. And you got to take the good with the bad. In our family, we've got people who were slave owners, and we got people who worked the Underground Railroad. So, and we've got people who were slaves. So we've got people who, on that side of it, we've got ancestors who've done all that. But why it's important is that this is something that needs to be passed on so it's not forgotten by our children and our grandchildren. That's the whole reason, really, I started doing the videos in the first place, was so that Shannon and Vera, my grandchild, will someday be able to have all these stories and information readily at hand that they could learn from. I mean, they hear enough of it anyway, but once I'm dead and gone, they'll still have this record of these stories and this information that they can fall back on.
Okay. It says that you're not actually a YouTube or a Facebook subscriber. What drives you to keep on going?
Well, I gain as much enjoyment out of what I do, learning. I've learned a lot doing these videos. Especially the Dark Celtic history. There are so many aspects of the supernatural and creatures and things like that I just didn't know about before. There's such a rich supernatural, cryptic world in Celtic society, Irish and Scottish. That just fascinates me. And then the Celtic badass, there are so many brave people who have Scottish, Irish, Celtic, blood in them that have done such incredible things that I thought their stories just needed.
Where did the Ye Olde Scot come from? How did that get started?
I actually, from time to time, I will have somebody, send me a message. Ye Olde Scot is not proper English, blah, blah, blah. No Scot ever said, I'm not Ye Olde. Oh my God, really? But Ye Olde Scot comes from when I was in the military. I was in the United States Army. And because I've always had a book or two of Irish this or Scottish that, I was always learning something. every time I always had a book with me, and it was always about Irish or Scottish or Celtic something. And so I got the nickname from all my army buddies, Ye Olde Scot. And they would be like, I'd be sitting there on my bunk reading a book, and they'd come in, "Yo, Ye Olde Scot, we got formation in 10 minutes." That kind of thing. So that's how that came from.
Okay. Another coach. Are you interested in anything else that isn't associated with the Celtic history and culture?
Chickens.
Oh, God.
I love my chickens. She loves her chickens.
I love my chickens.
Being a chicken parent, I guess we'd call them, but we live in the city. We live a half a mile from the international airport here in St. Louis. So it was kind of odd, but the backyard chicken phase is kind of took over America, and people are just popping up all over the place. We got them just so we can have fresh eggs every day. But those chickens, they have such personalities. They're so cool, and they're just neat to have around. So, and the dogs don't mind them, the cats don't mind them. It's just like another pet, really.
Yeah.
I love when you go outside, you open that back door, and there they come running. They're waddling. It's so cool.
Okay, I heard you wrote a book.
I did. Well, okay. Way back in 2009. See, I've always been, especially with kids, a storyteller. Okay? So, well, you did. You made me write a book. Because I was always telling stories. So she told me one day, she says, "You need to just sit down and put that down on paper. Get it out of your system." Right?
Yeah.
Well, look at me now. I'm still writing stories.
No, you told me you would if I leave you alone.
Yeah, I said, "I'll do it if you just leave me alone. Let me come home and concentrate on it every day. I'll do it." So she did. Before long, I had a book. I sent it off to a publisher. They published it. It did okay. I mean, it wasn't great.
What's the name of the book?
It's called The Highland Way. And
Where can you get it at?
you can't get it anymore. It's out of print. But you can read it on Wattpad. Go to Wattpad, www.wattpad.com. It's a place for writers. But you can go on there and search Jeffrey McDonald. It'll be on there with the rest of my stuff. And it's on there along with the other two parts of it.
Okay. What's the best memory you have from the Highland Games and festivals you have been over the years?
Well, me and a bunch of guys, Joe Lane and a few others, his brother Jake, and we went. There was a guy named Russ Murphy. And Russ had been involved in the Highland Games across America, around the world for 20, 30 years. He was a judge, but he invited us up to go to the Highland Games in his area when he runs at Kiowa, Colorado. He lives in the mountains, so we drove up there. He put us up in this family room or whatever. But when we woke up in the morning and we went out the back door, and nothing but mountains around you, and eagles flying, and deer running through the woods. And it was like being in the Highlands. It was the coolest thing ever. And then to go from there, the whole truckload of kilted guys, big muscled up kilted guys, would go down to this festival, and we just had a ball that whole day. And then after that, we went back, drank a bunch of beer, had a good time, drank some whiskey, some scotch. It was a good time. It was really, really good time.
Oh, that's great. Well, one more final question.
Okay.
Okay, will you write another book to the Texas?
The Highland Way? Well, I did. They're on the Wattpad as well.
Okay, cool.
So it's the Highland Way, and you got the Texas Way. I kind of incorporated. The Highland Way has to do with a guy who kind of loses everything, and his daughter dies on him, and he tries to fulfill her last wish. And by doing so, you know, he ends up falling in love again. So I tied St. Louis, which is where I'm originally from, with Texas, which is a place dear to my heart. I lived there for 23 years, and that's where I met my lovely wife.
Hi.
And then the last one is called The Vengeful Way, and that kind of finishes out the story. And it's a little trilogy on there. And there's some other stuff on there too, like Max History.
How about Uncle Charlie?
Uncle Charlie's on Shannon, remember?
Okay.
That was we did a story with my daughter, she loves to write too, called Uncle Charlie, and it's really dark.
Tell us where to find it.
Look up Shannon McDonald on Wattpad, and it'll be on there. It's called Uncle Charlie. And it actually won second place in a short story contest here in Missouri. So it was cool.
Well, thank you for taking the time out on this interview, and hope we can do this again soon.
Okay. You want to kiss the interview? Thank you.